Are you a businesswoman who is finding it challenging to get your ideas across and make a point? Welcome to Speakers Who Get Results with Elizabeth Bachman, a podcast dedicated to helping women get the visibility they want, whether making a speech or talking in a meeting. Every week, get valuable lessons from Elizabeth or learn from her roundtable conversations with experts and speakers on how to make a difference, not just a point. On to the show with your host, Elizabeth Bachman.
Hello and welcome to Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host, and this is the podcast where we interview experts from around the world on such subjects as visibility, presentation skills, leadership, and communication challenges, and much, much more. Before we begin, I'd like to invite you to go check us out on YouTube. You can see us as well as hear us. If you're curious how your presentation skills are working or not, you can take our free 4-minute assessment at speakforresultsquiz.com. That's www.speakforresultsquiz.com. And that's where you can see in 4 minutes where your presentation skills are strong and where perhaps a little bit of support could get you the results you need and the recognition you deserve. My guest today is Susan Walsh, known as the classification guru. Susan is a fixer of dirty data, believe it or not, and she made a name for herself in her unique niche through speaking. So I was very curious to have her. The official bio is Susan Walsh is the founder and managing director of the Classification Guru Limited. She's Scottish. It's a special data classification, taxonomy, customization, and data cleaning consultancy. She's an industry thought leader, TEDx speaker, and author of Between the Spreadsheets, Classifying and Fixing Dirty Data. She's also the creator of COAT. It's a system for classifying, organizing, analyzing, and trusting your data. Susan has developed a methodology to accurately and efficiently classify, cleanse, and check data for errors, which will help to prevent costly mistakes. This could save days of laborious cleansing and classifying and can help your business find cost savings through spend and time management. That's spend management and time management. She supports better and more informed business decisions. Susan brings clarity and accuracy to data and procurement. She helps teams work more effectively and efficiently, cuts through the jargon to address the issues of dirty data and the consequences of not cleaning it in an entertaining and engaging way. She's passionate about helping you find the value in cleaning your dirty data, and she raises awareness of the consequences of ignoring issues through her blogs, webinars, and speaking engagements. So on to the interview with the wonderful Susan Walsh. Susan Walsh, I'm so happy to have you on Speakers Who Get Results. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, it's really delightful. When I first I heard about you because we're speaking on a conference together.
Yes.
And I said, who's Susan Walsh? And I looked you up and I went, oh my God, she's amazing. I've got to get her on the phone. So I have a lot of things to ask you about. But
Fabulous.
Before we start, let's go to who would be your dream interview? If you could interview someone who's no longer with us, who would it be? What would you ask them? And who should be listening?
Well, I was going to say Robbie Williams, but he's alive, so that's not going to work.
That's Robbie Williams behind you? Yes.
Yes, love of my life. Got asked this question yesterday as well, and I have always said my gran is that I'd love to interview my gran.
Your grandmother,
She was 60 when I was born, so she was already older. and had dementia from when I was in my teens. And she lived this amazing life up until the age of about late 30s. She was single, she didn't get married. This was in the 50s, 40s and 50s, when that was just unheard of. So I'd love to be able to ask her what she did, where did she go, what did people think of her, because it must have been, against the grain to be a single woman in those days. So I'd love to ask her those kinds of questions.
Ah, wonderful. What year was she born?
1914.
1914. Okay. Yeah. So she would have been a teenager during the Second World War.
We had her identity bracelet, her ration books. Yeah. Real piece of history. Great.
Well,
I remember a great story from her as well. Sorry, just chatting on here.
Please.
So we live in a seaside town, and a ship was bombed and got sunk, and a whole load of stuff washed up on the beach. And for the first time, they saw bananas. They had never seen bananas before.
And where was this?
This is in Broughty Ferry, which is a suburb of Dundee.
And Dundee in Scotland. So let's get the elephant out of the room. Oh wait, this is a very international audience here. Yeah. Where are you from? This charming accent you have.
So the accent is a Broughty Ferry / Dundee accent, but very toned down because I've been living in England for nearly 20 years now.
So do they comment on your English accent when you go home to Scotland?
No, they don't actually, but I do speak to my dad every day. So I'm clawing on, holding on to my accent with everything I've got.
When I grew up, our next door neighbor was from Mississippi, and you could always tell when she'd been on the phone with her mother because she'd come over and the accent was back. So
when I go home for visits, it's a lot stronger when I come back. And some of my friends who are European are like, what? What did you say? Because I talk faster, my words are stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Same once I've had a few cocktails as well.
Well, that always helps too.
Yeah.
So, Susan, I wanted to ask you, you've created this awesome company classifying data that you're doing all by yourself, mostly?
I have a team now, but they only started in January. So, most of it's been just me.
And the thing that I really struck me when we were chatting, that you said, people didn't know they needed me. And I had to get myself out there through speaking. And I went, oh, I remember that. I mean, I've had great memories of trying to convince people that they had to hire me and they didn't know they needed me. Until I finally found the audience that did understand the value of what I did. So that's my first question. Actually, that'll be my second question, because my first question is, I've read your bio, out loud, but tell us what you do, why you created the classification guru. Why do we need you?
Well, I was working for a spend analytics company, and I could see that they were spending a lot of money on dashboards and reporting and analytics. But actually, before they could do any of that, the data had to be cleaned. And it was literally every single data set that came through the door was a mess. And I knew that my skills were in the classification of the data. And I couldn't really do much on the analytics side, and I hadn't really worked in procurement, so I didn't know that, but I did understand the data. And so when it came to kind of after 5 years, I wanted to move on. I didn't know where I could get a job doing something similar. I didn't even know if my job had a name. Mm-hmm. So my options were to either find a whole new career or start a business doing this, just offering the cleansing part. Which even to this day, nobody's really doing that as a standalone service except for me. I'm just out there.
So for our listeners who, first of all, what's spend analytics for those who haven't been in the weeds with that?
Okay, so that would be used a lot by procurement departments, and they are the people who buy goods and services for the company that they work for.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a global company, for example, they could be buying office supplies from in a number of different countries, and they could be paying very different prices for the same thing in different countries. So by using spend analytics, you can compare what you are paying for certain items, if it's classified properly, of course. You can look at how much you're spending per supplier, and that might mean that you can negotiate better rates with the supplier that you're working with. It can help with things like rogue spending, where people are buying things that they shouldn't be. But if you don't have
rogue spending, you said?
Yeah, rogue. So
rogue. Okay.
Yeah, rogue or even fraud. It can help to identify that. And it could be, people are buying, I don't know, chocolates every week for the office. It could be something as simple as that. That would be rogue spending, because it's not,
and it's classified really as printer paper, right?
Well, it might not even be classified, so nobody knows they're buying it.
Okay.
So that's the thing. So using spend analytics, if you classify your data, you can then see what you're spending where and how much.
Let's use printer paper as an example then. I'm sure there are all sorts of really interesting things that people purchase, but
oh yeah.
But to make it understandable for most people, you've got to go and buy yourself some boxes of printer paper. If it's more expensive because someone's buying very expensive chocolates for the office every week, that could raise the price, correct?
So if it's been misclassified, like if the chocolates have been misclassified, it could probably lower the cost of the paper potentially, or skew the pricing. The other thing is, you might be in one particular office, you might be buying paper from 2 or 3 different suppliers, and for the same paper, you're paying a different price for the same thing, but from each of the different suppliers. So using analytics, you can look at trying to make cost savings by maybe using 1 or 2 suppliers, not 3.
So this sounds like a nice, organized, directed way of describing it. But one of the things that you're really good about is making data fun and relatable. So when you tell a story, when you try to explain it, I won't force you to talk about copy paper or printer. I mean, it could be copy paper, printer paper, anything. How do you describe this to, say, great Aunt Sally, who's talking to you at the family dinner?
So it's basically my tagline on LinkedIn: fixer of dirty data. That's the best thing I can do. It says everything.
What do you mean by dirty then?
So dirty could be inaccurate, missing, partially completed, duplication. So quite often, if you have a database, you might have one person in there more than several times. Same address, name might be slightly different, like R. Smith, Robert Smith, Bob Smith. So cleaning all that up so that organizations can work properly, save time and money, and especially with things like databases, make sure you're actually contacting the right people.
Which means you have to have a human being looking at this, because a computer would not understand the difference between Robert Smith, R. Smith, and Bob Smith.
Nowadays, you can find code and systems you could write to recognize that. I prefer to do it manually with my team, that get it right first time, and then it can be automated afterwards. So that's how I would do it.
How did you get people to know that they needed you? how did people, I mean, this is a very specific thing that you do. How did you have customers find you?
It was really difficult. So I exhibited at a procurement event, which is where the majority of my clients were going to be. And they were like, yes, we need your services. I wish I knew about you 6 months ago. But I realized quite quickly that, I'm needed at a specific point in time. It's not just an instant kind of purchase service, it's still, you only need me when there's a problem. So I had to find a way to position myself as the expert so that people knew who to contact when there was a problem. And so I started connecting with a lot of people on LinkedIn, just leaving my details with them, and started connecting with some other thought leaders, influencers on LinkedIn, growing my network. And at the beginning of January 2020, at that point, I hadn't spoken, I hadn't done any podcasts, I hadn't done any events. And my plan for January for the year was to, I think, do one in-person speaking event and 2 webinars. Mm-hmm. And I think I did
per month, right?
No, just for the year. I just wanted a small target.
Okay.
Yeah. For the year, I ended up speaking at, I don't know, up to 20 events, and I did multiple podcasts as well. I have never asked to go on someone's podcast. I've always been invited on. It is a real kind of snowball effect. Once one person gets you on and then someone hears that and then they want you on their podcast and someone else wants you on their podcast, someone else wants you to speak for them. And so it snowballed from that. And last year was all about online speaking, and I kind of honed my skills that year. But this year really wanted to try and speak in front of people. So my first opportunity was when I did my TEDx talk in May, which was absolutely terrifying because I was completely out of my comfort zone. I had no notes. I just had to talk for 12 minutes. But then I had my first data event, in-person speaking event in September. And it was just amazing. I loved it. I was really comfortable. Room was packed. Really great audience. I could have done it again. I just enjoyed it so much. So I'm looking forward to do more this year.
What I'm hearing here is that you practiced a lot so that you got better every time. Also, part of what's fun is you're fun and funny. Did you ever have a moment of thinking, how do I show up as me? I'm a little disappointed that today I'm not seeing the glittery background that I've seen.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you've got 3D Susan and Robbie today.
Yes, I've got, but you've got a very fuzzy lamp behind you.
Yes,
and you've got this wonderful glittery background.
That's my data den.
The data den. Okay, yeah. What's the data den?
When I moved in February this year, but before that, my old flat, I had my kitchen behind me. And so as soon as online meetings with video started, I mean, I've worked from home for years. I've done a lot of Zoom meetings before most people knew what Zoom was, but most of the time it was audio only. So then it just got really hard to keep the kitchen tidy behind me. So I got a white screen. I was like, this is so boring. What can I do? So I got some tinsel and I've hung that over the
white screen
now. Yeah. And so used that. But now I'm in my new flat. I don't use it as much because it actually feels quite restrictive now, whereas I've got like lots of lovely space now, and I've got these 2 behind me and my fuzzy lamp.
Got a couple of life-size images behind you.
Yeah.
So
there's a life-size 3D cutout of myself, and then one of my future husband, Mr. Robbie Williams. So
Robbie Williams. For our international listeners, who's Robbie Williams?
So he's a well-known singer in UK and Europe. He was in a boy band for a number of years and then went out on his own. So I've been following him for 30 nearly 30 years.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
a long time.
One of these days he'll meet you and realize that he's your future husband.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, because I feel like, is it going to be a disappointment if I meet him? But at the same time, I really would love to meet him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Having come up in the opera business and worked with a lot of celebrities, so many of them are wonderful, and some of them are really horrible off stage.
Yeah.
So you never really know.
I get the impression he might not be like the man he is on stage. So
well, yes, and you've built up this whole fantasy around
I
him.
know.
Which is actually, when you're a public figure, that happens. So I wonder, have you had any people who come and approach you and feel like they know you because they've been listening to you?
All the time.
Okay.
And actually, it was really exciting at Big Data London a couple of weeks ago, because I was walking and all I would hear was Susan. And it's all these people that I know from LinkedIn that we've never met before. And so we're talking, and yeah, sometimes people really do think they know you really well.
Yeah. Or when you see an actor and you think, oh, that's the character. But no, it was just an actor doing his or her job.
Yeah.
It is part of putting yourself out there, is creating an image. So,
yes.
So I'd be curious a little bit about the thought that went into creating your images. Your online images are awesome, and they are. I'm assuming they're very you. You and I haven't met in person, but it doesn't. But I also imagine there were people who said, "You can't do purple tinsel on LinkedIn," things like that. Talk to us a little bit about the thought process of making your image really you.
So I remember when I first started on LinkedIn, and maybe not when I first started LinkedIn, but when I first started the business, and I had maybe up to 1,000 connections or something. And I had done a post on a Friday, and it just said, "I love data, so you don't have to." And it was just a picture of me. And I remember the first time I got 1,000 views, and I was like, wow, 1,000 people like that. And they saw the personal side of me. It's very much what you see, what you get with me. And I realized that worked well. So having seen what was around on LinkedIn, I could see that nobody was really talking about data quality, data cleansing, and it's such a boring subject. You have to do something to get people's attention. So I did lots of fun posts. I hooked up with other influencers and did stuff over Christmas, and then I wanted some animated videos. Because I wanted to be able to appeal to not just data people, but people who work with data, and it's not necessarily the same thing. And to do that, you have to do it in a really relatable way. So, and I wanted to have fun with it, because what's the point in doing it if you don't have fun? People, there are loads of excellent, particularly data trainers out there who are very serious and very good at what they do. But for the average lay person, I don't think they're going to remember them, but they're going to remember me with my sparkly background, my funny videos, and my fluffy lamps and lip
humor
syncs.
is a huge asset for a presenter, definitely.
Yeah, it's funny because I didn't think it would be received as well as it was. I thought that potentially it could really divide the audience and actually restrict my customer base. But if anything, it's kind of grown it. It's people feel like they know me before they approach me for help. So it's kind of like an automatic filter before people even approach
Breaking
me.
the ice.
People who are not interested in my style won't come and talk to me.
Right.
And that's fine. That's like, we're probably not going to work together very well. But yeah, that that presence attracts like-minded people. So it's absolutely not done me any harm whatsoever.
I know I've introduced you a couple of people because I know that they are going to love the purple tinsel and, solid business behind it, but the purple tinsel is going to definitely make a difference.
Yeah, and that came about during lockdown when people really needed some cheering up, basically.
Yeah.
That whole period, I posted a lot, but none of it was about work. It was all just fun stuff. Because I needed to keep my presence alive, but I didn't want to be a salesperson.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things that that I talk a lot about is describing a complicated technical subject through a metaphor. And what I love about you is the coat system.
Yeah.
You talk about, as somebody who, I know people who arrange their closets by color.
Yeah.
I know a lot of other people who just throw everything into the bottom of the closet and haul it out if they need it. But sometimes there's penicillin growing on that pair of shoes. What is your coat metaphor? Talk to us about that.
So again, it was about getting everybody relating to data, understanding the importance of data quality. So by saying, make sure your data has its coat on, it needs to be consistent. So that's where the wardrobe analogy comes from.
Consistent. Okay.
Yeah. So that is, if you're working in a global organization, things like liters, how do we spell that? What date format are we working in? European, US? All those kinds of things make a huge difference to your data. Then it needs to be organized, which like a closet, if you've got your clothes all organized, you can just go and pull out what you need, and data is very much the same. If you organize it, you can find that information really quickly. Then it needs to be accurate as well. And depending on what kind of data you're working with, that could be, well, we need these 5 columns filled in for this product, or we need the customer's first name, last name, address, and email. Or it could be, it has to be 100% accurate if it's a financial data, for example. And then once you have all those 3 things, you then have trustworthy data. So that means that, you can make decisions for your organization, your team, whatever, based on accurate data. So that's where that came from. And I've had a lot of fun with that.
Code is consistent, organized, accurate, trustworthy.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well done.
You. Okay. Good. Good. Have you found that a metaphor like that makes it so much easier for people to understand?
Yes. And also, so proud this week. I had commented on someone else's post and referenced quote, and someone said, "Oh, what's quote?" And somebody else replied with the answer, not me. And I was like, "Oh,
yay!
Yes, yeah,
hooray!"
Because, that's something that everybody can understand. It's not technical. The data people like it because it's fun, and the non-data people understand it, so they'll remember it too, hopefully.
I have to quickly ask you, I work with a lot of people in Silicon Valley and in the tech industry, mostly trying to get them to use metaphors. So to get them to use metaphors to explain what they're doing. What's the difference between big data, which is crunching lots and lots and lots of numbers, and what you do?
So you can't crunch the numbers until you know the numbers are right. So I'm the bit before that. So there are lots of different analogies that I use. But if you're having guests round, say that's crunching the big data numbers. I'm the hoovering before people come up.
Okay, translating that into American English, if you're having guests for dinner, she's the person who's vacuuming.
That's it, yeah.
Okay. Vacuum before they get there. Yes, well, and the thing about data is the one thing every company for an American in the world has in common is people. And different people will enter things in different ways. I go back and forth.
Yes.
Yeah, I go back and forth between the U.S. and Austria, Austria and Germany. And if I'm not careful, I will. You have to switch the numbers. In English, it's 37. In German, it's 7 and 30. And that has gotten me into trouble more than once if I automatically said 37, but I really meant 7 and 30.
Yeah.
Has, and that's the kind of, I could certainly see that's the kind of human mistake that would be so easy to make.
Yeah. And in Austria, you might call Austria, is Austria a different name in Austrian? Or is it the same?
Österreich.
Right.
Österreich.
So you might have it in your data as Österreich.
Yeah.
My data might say Austria.
Yes.
French data will say something else. So, yeah. There's an example of dirty data. You've got the one country, but it's spelled multiple different ways. So you would need to streamline that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And it's not Australia. I live near the town of Innsbruck, and in downtown Innsbruck in the souvenir stores, they have T-shirts that say no kangaroos in Austria, not Australia. And people are constantly saying, so how's life in Australia? And I said, actually, that's a different continent, not the same one.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I waited till nearly the end. You have a book that's just come out. Tell us about the book. Show us the book. Oh. Between the spreadsheets, for those of you who are listening.
Yeah, so this is it. Between the spreadsheets, classifying and fixing dirty data. I finished writing it in April, and that's it, just been released. And the reason that I decided to write it was because there are very few references or information or books on cleansing, cleaning data, classifying data. And so I wanted to be the first to do that, to get out there and put my mark on everything. And share
I can't wait to read it. I can't wait to read it. I've been looking at it. I probably won't understand half of it, except that the way you're going to write it in a way that I am going to understand it.
I think you will. Most of it you will.
Who is it particularly for? Who's going to...
Everybody. So I purposely didn't want to narrow it down to just procurement people or just data people. So if you're starting out in procurement or data, you can read this and get something out of it. If you're already working in procurement and data, then you can still get tips, tricks, ways to work more efficiently from this book. And if you're a decision maker within an organization, you could read this book and understand the importance of actually investing in cleaning your data or classifying it. Because one of the biggest challenges I face is most of the people that speak to me are ready to work with me, but they can't get sign off from further up the organization. The businesses won't invest
because the businesses don't understand how important it is.
Yeah, they see it as a cost. They don't really see what the benefit is, and it's hard to quantify.
Yes, it's actually this is actually one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is how often women, especially, will run a department that runs smoothly through lots of little tiny things, and so they don't get promoted because they're not noticed. They're not. There's a wonderful book came out a couple of years ago called The Art of Doing Nothing, about the value of things not going wrong.
Yeah.
And we are so conditioned to having a crisis and rushing to fix it. And actually, just a quick story. Way back in the very early days, my very early opera days, I worked in Puerto Rico. I could tell this story because the people, they aren't there anymore, the people I worked with. But I learned it's mañana land, which means that nobody really gets to work until the day before opening night, when opening night is mañana, tomorrow, then people suddenly get to work and they rush, and they pull it off. They pull off a miracle, and there's this huge adrenaline rush from it. And I was trying to say, if you actually planned and you could have, you don't get this adrenaline rush of pulling it off at the last minute, but there's a great satisfaction in actually having something that runs the way you intended it to. I tried to sell this idea to the company, and they sent me a letter saying, "Thank you, we no longer need your services."
Oh, wow.
Because they love that adrenaline rush. And if you see it in business all the time, it's the adrenaline rush of fixing a problem, pulling off a rescue, the whole hero thing.
Yeah, that's really true.
The whole hero thing, where what you're doing is making sure the issue doesn't happen, which saves a lot of money, but it's invisible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was just thinking there's been a few jobs I've left, and I've thought to myself, you have no idea what I've been doing the whole time. You are going to be in so much trouble when I leave, because you just have no idea what's going to happen now.
Well, this is part of an ongoing conversation I'm having with several of my clients, trying to really get the message out in the world, how to accurately measure the contribution of the women who are doing lots of little fixes and tweaks all along the way, instead of one huge change, so that that contribution is measured and valued.
Yeah.
The value of fixing it before it goes wrong, which is actually much cheaper but invisible.
Oh, I say that all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we may have to get together a year or so from now, you and I, and just say, let's see how far this conversation has moved forward, because it's in
the data world,
constant challenge. Yes.
Yeah. In the data world, probably not very far, because the conversation around data quality has been going on for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And we have more data than ever.
Yes.
So I hope that this book will at least start a conversation with some people, or encourage other people to get into this space and talk about it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Let's try and, I hear quite often about $1 million projects, millions of dollars going down the tube because the data wasn't clean when they did an implementation and it doesn't work anymore. And it would have cost them a fraction of that, like literally less than 1% of the cost of the software implementation to fix the data first, but they just don't get it. Yeah.
I keep thinking about the Mars mission, the mission to Mars, where the rover went off. I think it either exploded or it went off into space, because there were two different labs working on it, and one lab was working in inches and feet, and the other lab was working in meters and centimeters, and nobody noticed.
Yeah.
There would be a story for you to tell. Yes.
I haven't heard that one before. There's something in my book, actually, in the Data Horror Stories chapter. There was a hospital in Scotland, and it was delayed because the aircon had been put in, I think, at the wrong height. And it was basically somebody had copied and pasted a column into the next column, and nobody had checked the numbers to sense check it. Well, actually, somebody did notice and reported it, and they still ignored it.
Mm-hmm. Susan Walsh, this has been such a delight. We're going to have to circle back and talk again and see how this is all doing, because I could talk to you for hours and hours. So
likewise.
Thank you so much for being on Speakers Who Get Results.
Thank you. And next time, I promise I'll come back with my data den.
Okay, so I want the purple tinsel. I will definitely want the purple tinsel. We'll have to do this again. Thank you so very much. And thank you, everybody. This has been Speakers Who Get Results. My guest has been Susan Walsh, the classification guru. Let me remind you that if you're curious about how your presentation skills are doing, you can take our free 4-minute assessment at speakforresultsquiz.com. That's www.speakforresultsquiz.com. And that's where you can find out where your presentation skills are strong and where perhaps a little bit of support could get you the recognition and the results that you need. This has been Elizabeth Bachman. Thank you so much for joining you. I'll see you on the next one.
We have just concluded another great episode of Speakers Who Get Results with your host, Elizabeth Bachman. If you got value from today's episode, please feel free to share us with your friends and colleagues. You may also visit elizabethbachman.com for additional resources. Be sure to tune in every week for new episodes, and thanks for tuning in.